By the time Johann Sebastian was 15, he was ready to move on to his next station at Lüneburg. As he had to travel 200 miles to get there, this was a major trip for him.
Well, it was major in the sense that he did it on foot. And one of the effects of political fragmentation, of course, means that there was no road system that was kept up the same way as you went from the southeast to the central part of Germany. People made trips by foot all over Europe in the 18th century and frequently drowned because of the ditches on the sides of these roads. Secondly, the accommodations in the 18th century, he must have stayed overnight somewhere, were nothing that we would accept today. You didn't rent a room, you rented a bed. And you were lucky if you were the only person sleeping in it.
The young boy must have been excited by the journey and awed by the beauty of this rich old town. Bach ventured so far because he had been awarded a scholarship to the distinguished St. Michael's School. The terms of the scholarship were simple.
They must be the children of poor parents who have nothing by which to live except good treble voices, so they may be of service to the church.
By accepting this scholarship, Bach made his first mature decision to change stations. He knew exactly what he wanted from Lüneburg, a chance to study in a stimulating musical environment. Georg Böhm was the organist at the 14th century St. John's Church here in Lüneburg and had considerable influence on Bach, both as a performer and composer. Hamburg is about 30 miles from Lüneburg. Bach went there to hear the music of Buxtehude and Pachelbel as played by Johann Adam Reinken. This magnificent late 17th century organ was built by Arp Schnitger, the most famous organ builder in Germany. When Reinken heard Bach play many years later, he remarked, "I thought this art was dead, but I see it lives on in you." The diversity of experiences that a young music student has is always very important. For Bach, he was studying at Lüneburg in a formal way, but he probably learned almost as much from attending concerts at a castle nearby in Celle. It was in this castle that some of the finest musicians from France performed. When Duke Georg Wilhelm married his French mistress, they created a provincial Versailles. This small but elegant court became a haven for refugees. Most of them were French Huguenots, Lutherans who had fled their country to avoid Catholic persecution. France's loss was Germany's gain, and these musicians brought with them works by the great French composers of the time, especially François Couperin, the popular court musician. How Bach managed to visit the grounds, we don't know. Perhaps as a violinist, or by knowing someone at the court. But what an experience it must have been for a teenager to see court life at first hand, to watch the courtiers and lavishly dressed ladies, and to see the architecture, especially of the chapel, which was decorated with charming excess.
There is a link between Couperin and Bach, in that Couperin is very tender, and Bach is very tender. So I don't know how tender he would have been without Couperin, but it only could add to his general personality, to his personality. See how he could express that in lighter vein. Probably it had more influence than we can tell, because he was so young and he was very malleable, of course, at the time. I feel particularly in some of the movement of the suites for cello or violin, I feel that you can find this intimacy, tenderness in intimacy, which is, so to me, also a great trait of Bach.
I'm in the small town of Arnstadt, where Bach had his first full-time professional job. And it was at this church here, which has had several names. In Bach's time, it was called the Neue Kirche, which simply meant that it was newer than some of the other churches in the area. But it did have a new organ inside it, and that's how Bach originally got involved with the city of Arnstadt in the first place. He was well known as a man to ask to test out new organs and to tell them if they had been well built. He came to do just that, gave a recital, and once they heard him play, they just had to have him as their regular organist, even though he was of the ripe age of 18 at the time. But I don't know if the town councilors realized the sort of person that they were asking to come. He was very restless, full of energy, and when he first got here, he was pleased to have the job, but quickly felt the need to go elsewhere for further inspiration. And for him, the port city of Lübeck was that place. It was here in St. Mary's Church that Buxtehude played a series of concerts known as evening music. When Bach learned of this, he asked the church council in Arnstadt for a month's leave of absence. However, he extended his stay to 4 months without permission, to the extreme irritation of his employers.